I brought in Maria Trimarchi, who is my co-host and my co-author on this book. And I had this wild hair of wouldn't it be fun if I somehow made it part of my job that I have to drink? So, every Wednesday morning I'm at the liquor store buying supplies, and it's sanctioned.
And it's for work.
You're listening to Around the Galaxy.
Welcome to Around the Galaxy, the Star Wars fan talk show. I'm your host, Pete Fletzer, and along with my co-host, Nick Milkey, we bring you conversations with the people behind the Star Wars fandom. Whether you're a lifelong fan or, hey, maybe you're just discovering a galaxy far, far away, we're here to celebrate everything Star Wars with you. And this episode is one you're not going to want to miss. Hey, are you a fan of Star Wars and cocktails? Well, I know I am. And on this episode, we are joined by the incredibly talented Holly Frey. Holly is not only a well-known podcaster and author, but she's also a convention stage host and a fellow Star Wars super fan. You may know her from her podcasts like Stuff You Missed in History Class and Criminalia, but she's also host of Full of Sith, a podcast dedicated to our favorite galaxy far, far away. But it doesn't stop there. On this episode, we're going to dive into her latest book, Killer Cocktails. Now, this book was inspired by her podcast Criminalia, which focuses on historical true crime. What is true crime? True crime. And get this, she talks about women poisoners, which is perfect for the spooky season, I suppose. And that's where the cocktail segment comes in, and we'll talk all about how mixing history and mixology have led Holly to create a book filled with both alcoholic and non-alcoholic drinks. Yes, mocktails for all. Plus, we'll hear about how she and her husband built their Star Wars-themed cantina at home called Kabe's Oasis. If you've ever dreamed of transforming your home into a Star Wars hangout, Holly has some incredible stories to share. Now, we couldn't resist trying a recipe or two from her book, so Nick whipped up something called the Peppery Sergeant, a spicy whiskey-based drink, and Holly really made sure everyone can get in on the fun, whether you drink alcohol or not. And trust me, you're going to want to hear how she came up with some of these ideas, including what her time at bartending school taught her about crafting the perfect cocktail. So sit back, grab your favorite drink, whether it's from Holly's book or not, and get ready for a fantastic conversation about Star Wars, history, fandom, and of course, killer cocktails. Also, don't forget, you can connect with us across social media at the SSW Network, or you can follow this show in particular on Twitter or X or whatever it's called, at ATGcast. You can also become a patron for as little as $3 a month by going to patreon.com/@the-SSW Network. You'll get early access to shows, you'll get shout-outs, you'll get swag, you'll become part of the SSW Network family. We would love for you to join us. And now our conversation with Holly Frey on Around the Galaxy.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm here. I have bottles. I'm ready.
Okay. You survived your Snowtoberfest, and now you're ready for real drinks.
Listen, I'm not a big beer drinker, but I went to college. I know how to do this stuff.
That's right.
I know.
It's like riding a bicycle. It comes back eventually.
Sure. Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
It is always a pleasure. You have joined us for so many different things, whether it's Halcyon tours, whether it's talking about, podcasting, talking about Star Wars and Full of Sith, your Star Wars podcast. You are, and we have several folks over the next several weeks that fit in this category. You're one of those great multi-hyphenates, and you have added author, podcaster, convention stage panel host. You do so many things. Here's what we're going to do, first of all, because everybody loves talking about themselves. In the off chance some person accidentally stumbled in here and doesn't know who Holly Frey is, please tell us a little bit about yourself, the things you do, and then we're going to transition into talking about this amazing book.
Okay. Such a rough question. Hi, Holly Frey. I podcast for my job. I host a podcast called Stuff You Missed in History Class and another called Criminalia. And I executive produce shows on occasion for iHeartMedia. And that's what I do by day. And then I also host Full of Sith for my Star Wars fix, because I love Star Wars desperately. And as you said, occasionally I host stuff at cons and whatnot. I don't know. What else do I do?
You're a amazing cosplay and costume maven. You make things, you sew things. I have an amazing watermelon shirt because you design awesome fabrics.
The limited, very limited edition.
Very limited edition.
Yeah.
Honored by that. But you do a little bit of all of it, and that's one of the many reasons we love you. You are also coming to us live from Kabe's Oasis, which is the Star Wars cantina you and your husband have built into your house.
Yeah. Who doesn't want that? Listen,
I've been there, so I try not to brag when Pete's on screen about the fact that I've been there. It's every bit as fantastic. And what you're seeing on the screen, if you're watching us live or if you watch this on the replay, is only but a tiny bit. Like, there's a whole, other thing. We've done some other interviews with you when you were in different parts of it.
Yeah. I would swing the camera around, but I would drop something otherwise.
That's right. That's okay. We don't have to get into that.
Yeah. My dream, as I like to always tell people, and I'll just keep saying it into the world so it manifests,
yes,
is that I win the lottery, I buy out a chunk of houses in our neighborhood, and each of them has its own weird bar. So we can do a bar crawl.
Yes.
Who doesn't want that?
I'm gonna lobby to buy one of those houses just to live close to it. But also, and because Star Wars is a big part of what you do, of course, Stuff You Miss in History Class, which I run into more people when I talk about Stuff You Miss in History Class, and like, oh my God, I love that podcast. And I'm like, I know her, and I love it too because I love history. No, she's not awful, but you are, and you and your wonderful husband Brian, who is also a great friend of our show. Y'all are dedicated Disney folks, Indiana Jones. Like, there's so many things. And you talk about, win the lottery, get houses in your neighborhood and different themed bars. You're only a few feet from another bar also in your house, which is a tiki bar. So, you're living it right. You're living the dream that a lot of us want, which is, I have multiple themed bars in my house. So let's not bury the lead entirely here. Yeah.
Yeah, the tiki bar is now kind of like the ice cream lounge, because when we built this bar, I felt bad that wasn't the coolest room in the house anymore. Now that's where we do like the soft serve, and we have like a whole little situation there. And it's where we build our Legos. But I will build a million kooky bars. I love that.
Hey. There's no shame in that game. Well, tonight's focus is, as much as we love Star Wars, and we may circle back to Star Wars here in a little bit, we're talking about killer cocktails. We both have our copies right here. Claire had hers. This is fantastic. And
I'll put the link to Amazon while you're talking. I'll put it in
This is available. It came out Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken, 2 days ago. It came out. I highly recommend this. If you love, I don't know, if you listen to Criminalia, talk a little bit about Criminalia, about that podcast specifically, and then, how that led to the book, what you've done. And then as we get into the drinks that Pete and I have made, we're going to kind of highlight some other fun things that you have done in there. But talk about the podcast and how it led to the book.
So Criminalia is a show that when I want to make sure as I tell this, I'm not blabbing anything I shouldn't. I don't think I would, but I'm just, so iHeart podcasting division has a deal with Shondaland Audio. So Shonda Rhimes' production company, they wanted to get into the podcast space. And for its launch, I was executive producing their slate. And my boss was like, hey, we need something in the history space. He had thrown some stuff at me and been like, is any of these like a potential jumping off point? And I ended up getting super invested in this idea of doing a show about historical true crime and specifically women poisoners, which is where it started. And then it was like, well, who should we get to host it? And I was like, me. me. I don't want to give this up anymore.
Right.
So I got to create this show, so it's sort of my baby, which is great. And then I brought in Maria Trimarchi, who is my co-host and my co-author on this book and is amazing and a really wonderful collaborator. And I had this like wild hair of like, wouldn't it be fun if I somehow made it part of my job that I have to drink? So I mean, every Wednesday morning I'm at the liquor store buying supplies, and it's sanctioned.
And it's for work.
It's super fun. So we added a cocktail segment, partially too, to like lighten it up, because some of these stories are dark, and particularly the things that we have tried to shine a light on, especially in that first season, which was the Lady Poisoner season, is like a lot of these women that have been vilified. Like some of them, when you dig a little deeper, you find out like, oh, this woman is a poisoner and is teaching other women to poison because they have no recourse to get out of abusive marriages. Like we're talking way back in ancient Rome, and like this was their only way out. And so it starts to be, it's in a way it's nice because you're shifting the perspective on how people view them, but it's also like heavy stuff. You're talking about domestic abuse and like people having no agency. And so it was like, what if at the end of shows like that, we could just have a cocktail and like smooth it out a little bit on the finish.
Take the edge off the murder a little bit.
So that's how we started doing the cocktail segment. And as we've gone through each season, the cocktail segment takes on a slightly different tone, which is just me being a ding dong and trying to make it hard for myself. Like we did a season on art heists, and unbeknownst to my co-host, I was making every drink match the colors in the piece of art that had been stolen. And she didn't figure it out. I kept thinking like, oh, this one's a dead giveaway. And then finally at the end of the season, we always do a wrap-up episode where we talk about our 3 favorite stories and our 3 favorite cocktails or mocktails from the season. And I thought she had figured it out, and she didn't, and I got to spring it. But the other thing that we started to do is one of our seasons was about people who were imposters, like criminal level imposters. And so for that season, we did mocktails, and we had such a good response to it that, I had some people reach out and be like, hey, I don't drink, or I'm sober, or I just don't like to drink. Will you keep doing some mocktails? And so from then on, we just started doing it where every drink has both an alcoholic and non-alcoholic versions. Nice. Sometimes they taste very similar, but sometimes there are things where if we do a very spirit-forward drink, there's really no way to make that a mocktail. So we kind of give the mocktail its own identity. So every drink in the book has a non-alcoholic version, which sometimes the mocktail versions are end up being my favorites because it's like easy drinks that you can just sip all day long and feel no guilt or concern.
I love that. And I want to kind of focus on that for a minute. And maybe this is a great opportunity. Pete and I agreed that we would both individually select a cocktail from the book, make it, be ready tonight. So I'm going to reveal what mine is because my story partially connects to what you're talking about with the mocktails. One of my twins, I have twins, they're 16 years old. They're both super obsessed with music, all these different things. And my daughter, Lily, she's in a huge Beatles phase right now. So
I know what you mean.
In the book, there is a story about, it's the tale of George Harrison's stalkers, and it says in parentheses, yes, plural. We've got it right here. It's page 51 in the book. And so the cocktail that goes with it is called the Peppery Sergeant. And I have made the Peppery Sergeant right here in my Kabe's Oasis glass. And what the Peppery Sergeant contains is whiskey, which is never in short supply at my house, club soda, and a Southern specific thing in my mind, I don't know, jalapeno jelly.
Yeah.
Ooh, and so those are the 3 ingredients. Very separate, very specific. I made this, and she texted me earlier today, and she said, Dad, because I told her about it when the book came in the mail. And of course, as I was flipping through, I was like, this has to be it, which is why I did a Snoketoberfest toast out of my Beatles glass, also as a connecting point.
I didn't even get that.
It's all coming together.
So it's all coming together. So she texted me, she said, Dad, is it worth it for me to try that drink if you leave out the alcohol? And I said, I don't really think so. There's only 3 ingredients. And then a split second later, I went, hold on. There's a mocktail version
That's awesome.
In the book, in every single recipe, there's the mocktail that goes with the thing. And I said, actually, this is perfect. So on my way home, I stopped and I grabbed the ingredients in order to create the mocktail version of the Peppery Sergeant. And it called for chai tea. I didn't have a good, chai tea substitute readily available. So we did ginger ale to give them kind of the bite and the flavor. My oldest two were like, oh, this is good. Like they're 100% in. But I have my Peppery Sergeant. You can actually see some jalapeno flakes, some pepper flakes there in the glass. It's quite tasty. So I love that you have the mocktail element in it. And I know multiple people who, have given up drinking, who are sober, who have included. And so I think that's really special. And I think that's really thoughtful that you included that as a part of this book. And I think that's really great that was a focus that you continued to put on that.
Yeah. I mean, that's been a really fun challenge for me too, right? Like, I mean, when we started this, like I have been drinking for a very long time. I love to drink. I am a hobbyist hooch hound, but I realized like just a few episodes in, I was like, I'm like a dilettante. I don't really know what I'm doing. So I went to bartending school so that I would have better skills. And I feel like even though I did that, and like just to get a really base understanding of like how different things go together, how to balance a drink, etc. But even though I did that, like the mocktails have been a really fun and unique challenge because it is different. It's one of those spaces. I think most of the people that I know that don't drink get really tired of like you go to a bar and their mocktail offerings are, well, I could do cranberry
Shirley
juice
Temple
soda with a lime in it, which is fine.
Right.
But like, it's kind of like the people that are vegetarian and everywhere you go, all they have is like a roast pepper flatbread. Like it's the same problem. So it's been really, really fun to find ways that, just like your average day-to-day drink can feel a little bit more elevated and a little more fun and just, makes every day have a little bit more shine on it.
Yeah. I love that. Well, Pete, what cocktail did you select as you?
Well, I didn't make it yet, so I'm gonna have to make it. But it's good.
Okay,
it's only 3 ingredients. Because I'm a simple man with trying to make my way through the galaxy. And in honor of the upcoming Skeleton Crew show, I selected the Vanishing Pirate. Which
That's
is
a
here.
yummy one.
It's a very simple. It's three ingredients. I'll make it in just a second. It's on page 103 of the book. And this one thing I was actually telling my son about it after football practice tonight on the way home. I was like, I said, when we get home, I have to see what we have for alcohol. And he was like, well, that sounds like a problem, Dad. But he was excited because he's like, are there stories? Is it just a recipe book or are there stories in it? And he's like, and I told him there's stories. And so he's going to, he's kind of into all the slightly off the beaten track kind of stories. And all these stories are great. And there's something that fun and short to read. And there's an audiobook version of this, correct? Is that right?
There is. Maria and I recorded the audiobook. That was the most bananas 2 days maybe of my life. It's so hard to audiobooks are just exhausting. And because you're just reading, you're talking for 9 hours at a stretch, like a couple days in a row. And it was really fun. But one of the things that was really funny is that, we record normally we're in 2 different places. And so we can, while the other person is talking, cough, drink our soda, etc., whatever. But when we did the audiobook, we're in the same room. So you have to be dead silent while the other person is talking. And there were times where, one of the other of us would just forget this information and be like paper shuffle, slap, slap, slap around. Like it was like, no, Holly, you gotta stop moving.
You gotta stop moving. Stop making a mess. You're screwing up the audio. All right, well, here it is in my Kabe's Oasis glass.
Well, matchy tonight.
Yeah, look at that, everybody.
Wow.
All right, well, I'm going to try this. Let's see here. Wow, that is really good. And I feel like I could accidentally drink 7 of these and not know where I am in a couple minutes. It's just I didn't say what's in it. It's elderflower liqueur, It's a strawberry vodka, and it's 6 ounces of ginger beer. And anything with ginger beer and ice is deadly because it just goes down like.
But the real deadly part is the elderflower liqueur, because I don't know if you know this, but it's called bartender's ketchup. Because if you're ever like making a recipe, and I just like it on its own, but if you're making a recipe and you can't quite get it to balance properly, or it just doesn't have the right mouthfeel, and you just toss in some elderflower liqueur, it'll usually smooth everything out.
Well, and the funny thing about it is, I've just recently discovered it. I don't even remember what it was. I was making some cocktails, so I had to go buy it. And it was actually another drink with, whoops, I just moved. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
We can hear
Okay. I can't, but that's okay. It is definitely that and ginger beer, and then any combination thereof is, it's just, the elderberry, it's just super smooth. You can almost drink it on its own. And this is really good, and this is going to be a problem. So thank you very much, Holly, for creating issues for me. So
I love it. I am having one that also has ginger beer in it. I am having a white toad, which is related to the story of Sally Bassett, who was an enslaved woman who was accused and convicted of poisoning her granddaughter's enslavers, which now she's kind of seen as a folk hero in Bermuda. But for this one, it's a super yummy one. White toad was the name of the poison that she is said to have used. And it's an ounce of vanilla vodka, 3/4 of an ounce of ginger liqueur, and then 5 ounces of ginger beer. And it's just like, it was an early one that we did on the show, and it has stuck with me ever since. Like, I make it all the time for friends. There's a version of it in the bar menu. I have a Star Wars version where we call it a white gorg. It's become a favorite amongst our circle.
And now, you being a mixologist on top of everything else, to all your multi-hyphenate,
baby.
That word is very douchey in bartending circles.
It feels, honestly, I feel kind of douchey saying it. As somebody who likes to make drinks and is very good at it, there we go. Do you find that like the infused vodkas and some of the liqueurs, well, liqueurs of course make a difference because it leads with that, but like some of the and this one, it's a strawberry infused vodka, which ordinarily doesn't have an overpowering strawberry taste, but it brings something to it. Do you find, like, how do you feel that plays into making some of these drinks?
The thing is, right here is one of my favorite things, and it's part of like our whole ideology for the book is that nobody needs to be like beholden to any of this to the letter. Like, the whole idea is to give people like the comfort and the tools to be able to be like, I would like this to taste a little more like this, and kind of know where they can play with it. And so that's actually a great way to shift flavors around, is just to be like, well, I like this drink, but I think if it were a vodka that had a grapefruit note or, whatever, you can do that. Here's my tip that I give everyone. If you have a regular drink that you make that's like your go-to easy peasy, whether that's like an old fashioned or a Collins or like anything, if you do a quick infusion on your base spirit with like a tea bag, it changes everything and makes it amazing, and people think you're fancy. Like, if you make a vodka Collins or a Tom Collins, but you've infused your spirit with like a green tea beforehand, people are like, what is this? It tastes so fresh and bright. It's like, dude, it took me 20 minutes to like throw some vodka in a can. And I mean, it's like an easy way to just shift gears and make it something a little more interesting. Like, I have nothing against like spirit and mixer, but even that you can make a little bit more interesting and kind of get out of your rut.
I did notice it's the first time I've seen it is, you had use a tea bag for this one or that one in the book, and that's so cool. And it's definitely something I'm gonna have to try.
Listen, my autumn friends, this is not in the book, but if you do like a pumpkin tea infusion with your bourbon or your whiskey and you make an old fashioned that way, it's super autumnal, it's super easy, it's like no extra effort, and you have something that's seasonal and really a little more interesting than your day-to-day.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. Cool.
It's so great. And again, Holly has done this for Star Wars. Like I said, not to brag too much, Pete, I'm sorry, but I have been to Kabe's Oasis, and she has a menu. Like, she has printed up things. She's like, what do you want? And I literally said, let me sit in this chair that feels like exactly, right there on the screen.
Oh my goodness.
But I said, let me just sit here and make me things. And for several hours, we got to hang out. And she's like, well, what about this? I was like, if you bring it to me and put it in my face, I'm going to drink it. And they're all fantastic. They're thought out. They're special. There was the shot with the bubble and the smoke. There was the bacon. Yeah. Actually, that may have been the same thing.
No, at that point, you didn't know.
There's one called the Gold Leader that we do that is, it's like a pineapple-y, ginger. There's a little bit of cinnamon liqueur in there. We glaze the glass with cinnamon liqueur, and then I like to do a bacon infused bourbon with it, and it's just super yummy and delicious.
Again, winners across the board. If you like, and I did. You talked about the tea bags, Pete. I did the Indiana Jones show last summer. In fact, Holly, I think you were on with me for that. Before. What's the last one called?
Dial of Destiny.
Dial of Destiny. Before that came out, we did the podcast of the Wills. We deep dived into Indy. We had the cocktail, and that one was it had the jalapeno syrup. And so I bought jalapenos and I boiled them down and reduced it and made the syrup. And it sat in my fridge, and I was like, this is great. And I used it for multiple things. Yeah. White Lightning to sub for vodka in the drinks. Yes. That becomes a whole different party altogether.
Yes, but you can do it. And you know the Brita trick, right? Like if you have, it works for vodka. It works for the clear liquors. Like if you have a vodka or a moonshine, if you run it through a Brita filter, just in your pitcher or whatever, it will taste so much better after that, because it's like doing one more, almost like one more distillation pass. So if you have moonshine and you want to put it in there, highly recommend a Brita pass first.
That's the way to go. Well, this book is phenomenal. Pete put the Amazon link in there. Get it. Yep. I know Brian posted a video on Twitter that it's at Barnes & Noble. It's available in a whole bunch of places. I cannot encourage you enough to check it out. Like I said, my 16-year-old who loves the Beatles was excited that I picked the one I picked. But she's also my kid everybody in my house is into true crime. And, half the time I come home, my wife and my older two are, what's the next murder doc we can watch? What's the next, whatever. And she was like, I'm going to read all the stories. And that's the thing that we've buried the lead just a tiny bit on, is there are cocktails in this book, but every single one has a story connected to it. Who the killer is, who the person is, whatever the situation.
Yeah. And for people that listen to the podcast, about half of the stories in this book are from the podcast, so they're abridged versions. But then the other half and the other, half of the drinks are all brand new. So there's a mix of new and old. And I know for a lot of people that listen to the podcast, like one of the reasons we ended up making the book is that we kept getting people pinging us and being like, but will you put this online somewhere? Will you publish this? So I don't have to try to write it down in my car while I drive home. And so that's really, kind of the genesis of it. And now there's lots of new stuff with it. So
it's fantastic. We truly encourage everybody to pick up a copy of it. I loved it because, of course, I love you. I love all the things that you do. I'm excited and thankful that we've gotten to be friends. It also reminds me of the earliest days of Podcast of the Wills, when I went live on Sunday nights and tried to have a specific cocktail for every guest. And I think I got as far as like 10 or 11 or 12. I lost steam at some point. Pete's was literally like, yeah, it's a shot and a beer. Like you go to a bar, like you're the regular.
That's how much he thinks of me. He's like, this guy would be happy with it.
Pete didn't get the effort. It was a tough week. But it's so much fun. Everybody, please check this out. Holly, we're going to get you out of here, but tell everybody about where they can find you, where they can find the podcast, stuff you missed.
I'm making more of this while you do that, because that was.
You can find me. I'm still on Twitter as Surliest Girl, and on Instagram as SurlyGirly5. Sometimes you get free drink recipes in those places. You can find me yapping at Stuff You Missed in History. Class is at Missed in History. Criminalia is, continues apace. We are in the middle of our crime duo season, which has been actually kind of a downer. There's a lot of dark stuff in this one, but the drinks are fun. And Full of Sith is always available, so there's plenty of Star Wars chatteroo. I think those are the main places you can find me. You can find the book literally anywhere books are sold, whether that be Amazon, your local Barnes & Noble, your Books A Million, your, all of the places.
I would also recommend either through the Full of Sith channel or here on the ATG SSW Network channel, find the interview you did with Pablo Hidalgo, which was probably one of the highlights of Podathon this year, and the only story that got picked up, the only one that turned into news around the internet. Pablo says a little something about Obi-Wan Kenobi series that got people a little excited, which was great. And Pablo was just a real sweetheart for being a part of it, and you guys did such a great job with it. He is. But
you probably owe him a lot of cocktails for that, but we appreciate it nonetheless.
I bought him a few, so we're good.
Yeah,
we're good.
It all works out.
Yes.
Awesome. Holly, we cannot thank you enough for coming on. We love this book. Thank you
for having me.
We will continue to preach the gospel of killer cocktails. We will continue to preach the gospel of Holly Frey. And we will definitely see you again sometime soon. Hopefully in person sooner rather than later.
That sounds grand. Thank you both so much. I really appreciate it. Of course.
Well, that wraps it up for this episode of Around the Galaxy. Thanks to Holly Frey, and thank you for listening. If you had fun, please like, subscribe, share, rate, and review it. You can also follow us on all your social media networks at the SSW Network, or you can follow this show in particular on X at ATGcast. Head on over to our website, theSSWnetwork.com, for information on how you can join us as a patron and get early access, swag, and special benefits by becoming an SSW Network patron. The show has been copyright 2024 Pete in the Seat Studios, and our music is brought to us by the band Apollo's Ghost.